The perpetrator of the horrific school shooting in Parkland, Florida, purchases military-style assault weapon legally. Let me repeat that. He purchases military-style assault weapon legally. So did the man who shot more than 400 people in Las Vegas in October 2017. So did the man who gunned down 49 people at the Orlando Pulse nightclub in 2016. And so did the man who gunned down 26 worshipers at a church in Texas in November 2017. The killers in these recent incidents were each able to walk into a gun shop in the days and months before their attacks and legally purchase their assault weapon and magazines after passing just a random background check. That's why I believe that the U.S. should impose a federal ban on the sale and ownership of assault-style firearms. Mass shootings in the U.S. have increased, and according to Luis Claveras, Department of Global Affairs, University of Massachusetts at Boston, since 2004 there has been an astonishing 183% increase in massacres and 239% increase in massacre deaths. And that's because assault weapons are very easy to obtain. Today, Americans have to be 21 years of age before they can legally buy alcohol. But in most states, they can buy an AR-15 style, military-style rifle starting at the age of 18. Federal law has stricter age requirements for buying handguns than for the military-style rifle that have become the weapon of choice for mass shootings. Lindsay Nichols, the federal policy director for the Gifford Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, says, "It is absolutely striking that a young adult who is not legally able to buy alcohol can just walk into a gun store, provided they pass a background check. They can buy a very high-powered and, in some cases, military-style weapon. This is one of the many instances where our gun laws are out of date and we need reform," she said. But there still are many hurdles to impose a federal ban on assault-style weapons. Opponents often view that it can be too complicated to permit a writing of an effective ban. How will Congress decide which weapons to ban? But Congress has dealt with many complexities more daunting than the classification of assault weapons. Another opponent's argument is that the Second Amendment and that it will prevent law-abiding citizens from buying guns. But a ban on assault rifles is not in any way, shape, or form an attack on the Second Amendment. It won't prevent people from buying hunting rifles or handguns. It is more a prohibition on the manufacture of civilian use of certain semi-automatic firearms defined as assault weapons, as well as certain ammunition magazines defined as large capacity. But the biggest hurdle in imposing a federal ban would be the NRA. The NRA is the National Rifle Association, and according to Brendan Wise from the Business Insider, the NRA is indeed one of the most powerful gun rights lobbies in the U.S., spending millions every year to advance its agenda in Congress. Also, Michelle Mark from the Insider adds, but far more effective than the organization's political donation, it's its ability to mobilize roughly 5 million members across the country to vote for candidates who oppose gun legislation. These are just some of the political views in the way of getting a federal ban approved. But imposing a federal ban on style firearms would decrease the frequency and deadliness of mass shootings. Many don't know, but there has been a ban in previous years. From 1994 to 2004, there was a ban on assault weapons, but Congress let it expire and it never renewed it. Luis Claveras says that the key provision of the previous assault weapon bill was a ban on high-capacity magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds. We have found that when large-capacity mags are regulated, you get a drop in both the incidence of gun massacres and the fatality rate of gun massacres. But if the previous ban isn't enough to prove its effectiveness, one can look at other countries with restrictive gun control and laws, and they have a lower gun violence. Just one example is Australia. They had a spate of violence in the 1980s and 90s that culminated in a 1996 shooting that left 35 dead, and that led Australian Prime Minister John Howard to convene an assembly to devise gun control strategies. Over the next few years, gun deaths totals were cut nearly in half. And according to Chris Weller from the Business Insider.com, over the next few years, gun deaths were cut nearly in half. Firearm suicides dropped from 0.8 per 100,000 people in 2006 from 2.2 in 1995, while firearm homicides dropped from 0.15 per 100,000 people in 2006 from 0.37 in 1995. That's just one example of how imposing a federal ban on assault weapon in the U.S. would decrease the frequency of these deadly mass shootings. Now, Senator Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat from California, a pioneer and supporter of an assault weapon ban in the U.S., says that the goal of the ban is to prevent horrific mass shooting incidents, not stop the run-of-the-mill gun violence that kills dozens of Americans each day. Feinstein, along with 22 Democratic colleagues, introduced an assault weapon ban in the Senate after the Sutherland Springs shooting in Texas. She states, this bill won't stop every mass shooting, but it will begin removing the weapons of war from our streets. Yes, it will be a long process to reduce the massive supply of assault weapons in our country, but we got to start somewhere. Thank you.